Yeah. All right. Good afternoon. Andrea, are you online? If
Yes,
we
I
could
am.
great. If we could put you up on the excellent, we see you. First of all, thank you very much for taking the time. Our guest today is Andrea De Domenico, who is the head of OCHA's office in the Occupied Palestinian Territory. He's joining us from Jerusalem to give us a humanitarian update in the Occupied Palestinian Territory. So, Andrea, please, you have the floor, and then I think there are a few questions for you.
Thank you, Stefan, and good afternoon, everybody. As you all follow, I mean, the situation in the Gaza Strip and in Palestine and Israel continue to be extremely dire, tense, and very volatile. In Gaza, I think we can say clearly today that there are 2 million survivors. Every day is literally a struggle to survive, and survive to insecurity, because as we repeatedly say, there is no place that is safe to stay and to live. We, as a humanitarian community and the international community, we're doing all the effort possible to bring assistance, but the reality is that there is very little that we can bring inside Gaza to tackle displacement and deal with the looming famine that, as you might have read a few weeks back, it has been announced by colleagues from the Integrated Phase Analysis, IPC. The reality is that the system overall has its hand tight. Insecurity, for sure, is the main feature that we see all over. We have seen operations that have finished recently in Khan Yunis. They were supposed to be short and contained. In reality, they have been lasting for more than a month, if not two. And the level of devastation has been quite impressive. In these days, now the concentration of the activities, military activities, are more in Nusayrat. So it's on the verge of literally the border between the north and the south of the Gaza Strip at the Wadi Gaza level. The devastation that we have also encountered after this operation is quite impressive. Homes, cars, trucks, roads are completely destroyed. The vast majority of schools have been destroyed, and there is not a single university that is standing in Gaza. It will take years to bring back students to school, and you can imagine what is the implication for that. And lastly, we have seen really very problematic, let's say, operation in hospitals. In Shifa, a couple of weeks ago, there has been very heavy military operations, and our team have entered the following days and have to deal with a scene of terror. The hospital is completely non-functional at this moment. The number of fatalities that have been reported has been important, but also, and more problematic, the number of bodies that has disappeared, that has been buried in or in the premises of the Shifa hospital or around the hospital, has been also problematic and unknown, to the point that the United Nations and other colleagues of Palestinian colleagues have helped to the families to start recognizing the remnants of corpses. And that they have literally welcomed families that were trying to identify their family members, either through the shoes or clothes or any sign that could make recognizable the bodies that were buried into the graves that were found within the premises of the hospital. Looming famine is something also we're dealing with. As you know, this is a completely man-made and preventable situation. I think that there has been a lot of efforts from our side and from the Israeli side to some extent to increase the volume aid that is going to the north. The point is that famine, as you know, is not only about food, is a combination of food, sanitation, water, and health facilities. And those to be restored to the decent or a minimum standard requires really massive operations that we cannot really fully do as we speak. Uncertainty is a daily reality for people in Gaza. The displacement of families that have came to the south have been displaced at times 7 times. And in the recent days, no later than 2 days ago, we saw thousands of people again queuing toward the north, going on the coastal road, trying to cross the checkpoint on the coastal road, because there was a rumor that the Israeli forces have allowed or would have allowed people to go back to the north. Indeed, some people received phone calls that were intended to suggest that they could go back. And then when thousands of people showed up, the Israeli military had shot on the area, because they were quite taken aback about the number of people that showed up, because the tam-tam of the information was really disseminated all over. Humanitarian communities and actors hence remains tight. We are 6 months on operation, and still we do not have all the possible entry point open on regular basis. It's very problematic. Humanitarian operations are regularly impeded. On the week between the 6th and the 12th of April, we had 41% of our operations, request of operation to the north, have been denied. And just last week, a convoy, UN convoy, where UNICEF and WFP colleagues were, and UFPA colleagues were, has come under fire. It was, a crossfire, but still in an area that was supposed to be secured because it is in proximity of the checkpoint, and so it was supposed to be secure. It's the combination of strategies to make obstacle to humanitarian assistance is from access denial, but also simple delay at the checkpoint, or other type of impediment that will then ultimately not allow the humanitarian community to deliver our work and our assistance. I think in general we've seen in the last week, and we welcome recent Israeli commitments to improve aid facilitation, but we cannot accept, and we're dealing with this dance where we do 1 step forward, 2 steps backward, or 2 steps forward and 1 step backward, which leave us basically always at the same point with new, for every new opportunity that we've been given, we will find yet another challenge to deal with. So it's really, really difficult for us to scale up where we would like to be at the humanitarian operations. We keep on discussing with the Israeli Authority. They promised better coordination with Southern Command, and some progress was made here, but still there is not. We are not where we should be. Hopefully, we will continue and pursue our engagement at trying to get there. Opening the crossing directly to the north was one of the critical requests that we have done. We've seen some progress on that. There are still some tests. It's very sensitive, of course, as you can imagine, from the Israeli public. And also there is logistical challenges to face because of the level of the destruction in the north is quite important. So we have to find ways to get there. The processes of incoming trucks has always been challenges. It's not only about how many trucks enter, but it's also about the ability to bring that assistance to the people. A facilitation of humanitarian assistance is not number of trucks. Facilitation of humanitarian assistance is when we reach people that needs wherever they are. And that's what we are discussing every day with Israel. There has been resumption of bakery in the north. That was one of the commitments that Israel has made, and indeed there has been some WFP convoys that have succeeded to go to the north. And also the fundamental, of course, is the additional water line that was promised to be repaired, and we hope that we will see that soon. It's important for us to continue on this trajectory. It has to happen quickly because, of course, with the coming good season and the hot weather, access to water will be fundamental, as you can imagine. And of course, we call once again the party to stop the destruction of infrastructure. We have seen, unfortunately, the Operation Khan Yunis have left a completely demolished area. Hospitals, water and sanitation infrastructure, roads have been completely torn apart, which will, of course, complicate our ability to deliver. Reiteration of a message that we've been constantly asking to the parties is that to end the war, but that will not stop our efforts to deliver humanitarian assistance. West Bank, if I may, Stefan, briefly.
Yeah, please.
We have seen, unfortunately, since last Friday, particularly, a new wave of settler violence, with starting with, unfortunately, an Israeli boy from a settlement going missing and then found dead. That has caused a reaction with a simultaneous attack on 17 villages over the weekend. 3 Palestinians have been killed and many have been injured. Arson attacks on homes, cars, and other structure. There has been use of live ammunition, and dozens of livestock have been killed and hundreds stolen. And Israeli forces, in some cases, and accounts that we have collect from the ground, were somehow protecting the attackers, or in some cases participating to the attack. We counted 21 homes completely burned and 30 cars, and several agricultural infrastructure. Of course, impacting the livelihood of people, with 86 people overall displaced. Of course, this is quite concerning for us because it is entrenching a trend that has been very, very intense after October. We had 781 attacks, which is over 4 attacks per day made by settlers in the West Bank, to the point that yesterday the Prime Minister, the newly appointed Prime Minister in Palestine, has requested us, and the international community has called and gathered the international community, asking for a steady support to prevent the deterioration of the situation in the West Bank. We have also counted a gigantic step forward in terms of closures. We count 114 new closures that have been erected since October 7, and that includes checkpoints, ferry mounts, roadblocks, road gates, which is constraining the ability of Palestinians to move, to the point that some of our colleagues do not come to the office now since months because really, literally, it is not possible. And then, of course, this creates an impact on the livelihood and displaced people. We have more than 200 Palestinian households that have been displaced for a total of 1,300 people, mostly in herding families, and of course quite a considerable number of children. In front of this, we are releasing tomorrow the flash appeal from here to the end of the year. The entire humanitarian community will appeal for 2.8 billion to support the 3 million people identified across West Bank and Gaza. Of course, 90% of it is for Gaza. And in fact, the original request was for 4 billion, but considering the limited ability to deliver and the space that we have to do so, we have really focused on the highest priority. I stop here and happy to answer any question.
Great, thank you so much, Andrea. We'll start with Amélie, and then we'll go to Edie.
Stuck. Thank you. Amélie Botelier from AFP News Agency. My question is on Rafah. With everyone worrying about a possible imminent large ground offensive from the Israeli on Rafah, how do you prepare for that? are you in touch with the Israeli authority about possible evacuation plans or any kind of contingency? Can you explain to us, I mean, if it happens, how would you be able to respond to that?
One by one step?
Yes, please. Yes, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Yep. So the discussion on Rafah, of course, has been going on since now weeks. And first and foremost, we keep on saying that an operation in Rafah will have such a large impact on 1.3 million people. And if you count also the area around Rafah is even more, it's monumental. It will take a gigantic effort for the entire humanitarian community. And one of the biggest challenges, by the way, will be access to water, which is absolutely, as you can imagine, life-saving. We fear that our voice is not necessarily heard. We hope so, but we have not seen much of that through the past months. And what we're trying to do is, of course, to work with the humanitarian community to do contingency plan. We will not preempt movement or attract movement of people by installing camps in areas, also because there is not much space to do so. But we will do our best efforts to make sure that we will provide assistance where people are. And of course, in our contingency planning, we are also discussing with Israeli what else we can do to get ready. One of the challenges, as you can imagine, will be the access, because if we lose access to Rafah, and we have not clear idea what will happen to Karen Shalom, which means that the entire pipeline for humanitarian assistance is seriously jeopardized and compromised. And for that, we absolutely need an alternative. And the land alternative, because as we have said repeatedly, land is by far the best option to deliver assistance.
Thank you. Edie?
Thank you very much on behalf of the United Nations Correspondents Association for doing this briefing. A couple of follow-ups. First, the Israelis made a certain number of promises on opening up better access for humanitarian aid, including Kerem Shalom, Ashdod, and basically deconfliction. So you talked about 2 steps forward and 1 step back, or 2 steps backward and 1 step forward. Could you give us some concrete examples of that? And also, what's happening with the pier that the U.S. Said it was building? Is the UN involved at all? Do you see anything happening? And I have to say, personally, I was sort of horrified when you said all of the universities in Gaza had been destroyed. Any thoughts on why they would have been targeted? Thank you.
Thank you, Edith. So the challenges, as we have repeatedly said, doesn't stop when the trucks cross the border. The promises that the Israelis have made indeed have moved some conversation and some and have advanced some of the conversation that we have been having in the last 6 months. Because believe me, we have engaged them since the very first day, and this engagement continues day in, day out. But then, for example, the other night there has been an attempt to enter from the north. So trucks enter during the night, which is really problematic because for the UN then delivering during the night becomes extremely challenging and complicated. And we cannot, in fact, send colleagues in the middle of the night in a war zone with all the risk associated with the remnants of war and exploded ordnance. And so there are private companies that take that risk and go into the strip from the north during the night. But then they were trying to go south because they are the same trucks that we will use the following day continue distributing assistance. And there were more than 124 trucks stuck at the checkpoint in Salah ad-Din, stuck in the north, trying to go back to the south. With all the jam, it was a traffic jam basically. Some mission that went through to the north were unable to pass the track we had. It took 3 hours to go through 400 meters to bypass all these trucks that were blocking the road. In general, the teams, it was the data of the first week of April. I do not have yet the data analysis for this week, but last week, so the first week of April, from 1st to 7th of April, our teams have spent hours and hours just waiting the green line in a holding point south of the checkpoint. 29 hours for 14 missions. 29 hours multiplied by the number of people that is holding there, and he's staying there from, the colleague that just came back today told me we showed up at 7:30. At 10:30, they told us that the checkpoint will open only at 2:30. And then 2:30 for us is too late, because it means that the mission will not be able to come back by nighttime. There is a lot of, let's say, there is a lot of talk to walk before getting to the point where this facilitation materialize and translate into assistance to people. The peer is one of the initiatives. I think that the United Nations has always said that we are open to any possibility and any opportunity to increase the number of assistance, the volume of assistance that enter. It's of course for us fundamental to make sure that this is done in line with the basic principles of humanitarian actions, which is something that we are discussing now. And for us is also an issue of cost effectiveness, because ultimately, and particularly now that they are talking about the possibility to reopen Ashdod for the entry of humanitarian assistance, then of course each agency will decide which is the most cost-effective means to bring assistance in. But of course, as I say, we keep engaging with any possibility that is bringing additional assistance into Gaza.
If this, or in the universities, the question about the universities.
Yeah. So unfortunately, attacks on schools has been systematic, as you have seen, and particularly universities. I think that, I've seen with my eyes the number of civilian infrastructure that have been targeted, from cement track to university, to hospital, to schools. And you wonder if that is what is the military reasons to do so. What is concerning for me in the long term is that, as we have known in many other contexts, education is fundamental to build peace, and I don't think that leaving hundreds of thousands of children without an education, and those who are enrolling in university will see just their dreams disappearing, admitting that they will survive this horrible war. It's certainly something that will have a heavy impact on Gaza. Today I was talking with a new HC, and he made the same a great remark about the importance of protecting education, and because education is a hope for the future. And so, I think we will have to face this challenge very soon, when it's time to hopefully to restart and reconstructing Gaza.
Thank you. Ibtisam, Deji, and then Bassam.
Thank you. My name is Ibtisam Azim, Al Arab Al Jadid newspaper. I have first two follow-ups. The first one, you said that regarding aid entering to Gaza, you said there is a little bit more aid that entering, but could you elaborate, or for example, percentage? What do you need now, and what's the percentage of aid that is actually entering? If it's 10% of what you need, or more or less? And the second question, I just want to clarify something. You said that regarding famine, to tackle famine, it needs a massive operation that you cannot take, if I understood you correctly. Could you elaborate on that? And my last question is on the West Bank and the settler violence, because it is not actually new. Maybe it's intensified after October 7th. But according to your reports, previous reports, the settler violence actually was last year the higher than the year before, etc. Would you elaborate more on that? How is this infecting the farmers and other Palestinians there? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Issam. So there has been, as I said, a steady increase of the number of trucks that have entered. Unfortunately, we do not have the full picture in terms of private sector, particularly when the private sector goes directly to the north, and this is something that we're trying to look into. But you know, I cannot stop stressing the importance that first, you know, a truck is not a measurement that should be used, because it could be a truck of fuel that is giving the possibility to the salination plant to give fresh water, potable water for hundreds of thousands of people for a few days, or it could be a truck of mattresses that give a mattress to 90 people, because that's more or less the volume that it takes. So let's not be distracted by that. I think that what is important is also to understand that it's the effort has to be not only on the crossing, but also on the internal distribution. Unless we solve the issue of the internal distribution of humanitarian assistance, we will fail the assistance to Palestinians in Gaza today. And that's what is, for me, most important for you to retain today. Settler violence has been, you're right, last year was already a very concerning trend of violence, and I think you point exactly to the critical point. I mean, what is the breaking point of the combination of settler violence, movement restrictions, and the tensions that we've seen? We've seen, of course, some demolition and evictions also in the recent days. What will be the breaking point for the Palestinian community in the West Bank that will destabilize the West Bank? And that was exactly the message that we received yesterday from the PA, from the newly elected Prime Minister of the PA. And I think that this is fundamental for us to, as a collective, as a humanitarian community, but also international community, to insist that we need to curb that violence. And unfortunately, what we have seen is that there is some level of, connivance, I would say, if not active participation at time, with the Israeli authorities, Israeli army, and we have to really make sure that we have a dialogue with them to contain this phenomenon and reverse this tendency that could really strangle the life in the West Bank.
Hi, Mr. Domenico. This is Xu Deji with China Central Television. I also have two follow-ups and then one question. In your opening remarks, you mentioned last week 41% of your operation has been denied to get to northern Gaza. Does the Israeli authority give you any reasons, and what's in those convoy? And second, you mentioned it's a combination of strategy to make obstacles to humanitarian assistance. One is access denial, and second is just delay. Do you think the Israeli government is doing this on purpose, while they are saying that they did not try to prevent any humanitarian deliveries in Gaza? And my question here is, right after World Central Kitchen incident, the Israeli War Cabinet approves the reopening of border crossing areas. It's been about 2 weeks. Do you have any contact to Israeli government on what's going on this reopening of areas border crossing? Did they really open it, or they're still doing some procedures? What's the status now? Thank you.
Okay, so in terms of reasons and type of operation. So first of all, let me clarify. The humanitarian notification system that OCHA facilitated, my office facilitated on behalf of the entire humanitarian community, we distinguish two type of missions. The ones that we simply notify because it's in an area where we can, we just inform the Israeli army and the parties to the conflict that we're moving from A to B, and we move. What we need, where we need coordination, where we have to go through checkpoints, for obvious reasons, right? So the that percentage of rejection or delay refers specifically to those. First of all, I think that the strategy, honestly, appears to me at prima facie a little bit a way to say we are not bluntly denying you, but they also know very well how we operate, and they know after a certain time we cannot operate in a war zone without light, and so I genuinely believe that is a strategy that is intended to more control the narrative rather than saying, we are engaging and we are doing this, and is unfortunately the blaming game to the UN. You have seen it over and over again. We accept that, we continue to engage with them, and our objective is really to solve the issue and deliver. That's what we want to do. On the Erez crossing, we are talking every day, multiple times. They refer more generically to the northern crossing, and there has been some tests. I think that there is objectively the necessity of assessing properly what is the right entry point. Roads have been heavily damaged, and so there is a combination of logistical challenging and security challenging that have to be combined and analyzed from the Israeli side in order to allow us to do then those operations. There has been an initial number of trucks that have gone through, both through UN and private sector, through Northern Gate, but is not yet totally finalized which one will be the best option that we will use. And of course, we will keep you informed through our reporting.
Bassam, and then Benny.
Thank you. My name is Bisan Abkwik with Al Jazeera Arabic. Can you elaborate a little bit more on the status of hospitals in Gaza? How many hospitals are operating or semi-operating or completely not functional? And then a second question that I have regarding Al-Shifa. From what your colleagues have seen on the ground, is there any sort of assessment about how many bodies were found at Al-Shifa? And some reporting suggests or describes what occurred there as mass graves. Do you think this is an accurate description of the situation there?
Thank you very much, Bissam. So at the moment, according to colleagues from WHO, there are 11 hospitals that are working partially. What is really problematic, and we keep on discussing and engaging the Israeli military in this, is though the behavior during operations, because the claim is always that there are elements of belonging to terrorist groups that needs to be neutralized, and hence and because they use to shield themselves, they use hospitals and medical infrastructures. Of course, the military are forced to do it to enter. Now, since the very beginning, we have said that the misuse of hospitals, even from those who eventually will seek refuge or seek to hide weapons, is not acceptable. But equally non-acceptable is the outcome, the ultimate outcome we've seen systematically on most of the hospitals where the operations have been done. The last one was Shifa and Al Nasser. Shifa was already in reality very, very much challenged by previous operations, and it was minimally functioning. And the last operation completely shut down the ability. But I've seen with my eyes, the MRI shot through in a way that you wonder what was the military objective that was, seek or look for when you shoot an MRI directly basically just to dismantle the ability of the hospital to do MRI. There are 26 hospitals that are completely out of service, and there are 6 field hospitals that are currently operating. A lot of discussions also to eventually extend those further. Only 30% of primary healthcare facilities are functional, and we have 20 emergency medical teams that are supporting what remains of the health facilities in Gaza. Sorry, Bissam, remind me the second one.
The second question was about Al Shifa. I know this is still an ongoing.
So it has been extremely difficult for our teams to understand the scale and counting of the bodies, because what I have understood from the accounts of colleagues that have been there, they've used bulldozer to move bodies and move land, and so you can imagine what it means in terms of the remnants of the bodies that were found there. Reason why in my presentation was telling you that I've been debriefing a little bit the teams that was doing this operation, and they said that families had to recognize their family members by the shoes that they can find on a limb. So it has been quite difficult for us to establish what has happened beyond that. The work is still going on. What remains of the hospital teams and the medical teams in the hospital are still working in the areas, and we will report further if we have more to add on this.
Gabriel, then Abdelhamid, then I think we have to close it and then release Andrea.
2 questions, one on errors and one on... 2 questions, one on errors and one on what you call the blame game. On errors, from what I understand, errors was not crossing for trucks. It's initially was built for humans, and it was totally destroyed on October 7 during the Hamas invasion. Is it the case that you need to rebuild and build like a whole new crossing that would facilitate truck movement, and where is it at if that's the case? And on the blame game, Kogat keeps tweeting and telling that there are, I think, 500 trucks coming in a day, but most of them or like hundreds of them stay on the Gazan side of the border, and they basically accuse the UN on that, meaning OCHA, I suppose. Could you answer that?
So indeed, Erez was a pedestrian terminal. It looks like more an airport hangar where you screen people rather than goods. Having said that, what we need at this moment is simply an opening on the fence and a viable, passable road where trucks can come in. The challenge remains to make sure that we meet the security concerns and requirements of the Israeli on the one side. So we need a place where we do the scanning, or the scanning is done, not because we don't do it. The Israeli does the scanning of the assistant that comes in, and which is legitimate concern. So fine with that. But at the moment, the only area equipped is in Karen Shalom or in Nitzana. And the scanning capacity in Ashdod are not up to the scale of volume that we would need. So it will slow down the operations, potentially. So that's the challenge that we're having. And that's why I'm saying that there is still a lot of discussions. And I think that there's a lot of, studying on the ground from the IDF to understand where to position this this site. And then we will have also the need to do something inside, because then it resonates with your second question. When the trucks arrives, then I mean, at times they can be dispatched directly to the point of distributions. At times we have simply to store the commodities in a place. In order to store commodity in place, we need to have a space that is, safe, protected from the sun, and secured, which we do not have at the moment in the north. So we have identified areas within Gaza City and Jabalia where we could create that space, and we're working with that with colleagues of UNRWA and WFP. But this is something that we will take a bit more time and a bit more facilitation in terms of equipment, material that we will need to achieve that. In terms of the blame game, listen, the math is simple. When the mechanics, and I spare you all the details, but the mechanics of the crossing is very complicated. It's not that the truck enters, drop in, and then we can simultaneously come and pick it up. So first of all, we have, as an average, we have every 3 trucks that enters from Israel, we manage to evacuate the commodities with 2 trucks, more or less. Take it with a pinch of salt, because it's not a precise science, but that's our experiences so far. Because the trucks that comes in from Israel are charged in a way, are loaded in a way that allows and facilitates the scanning. And so they are less loaded than what we do. And also we use double trailer always, which is not always the case for the trucks that are bringing the material in, first thing. And second thing is that if we cannot access the drop-off area when there is a further drop-off to pick up the material, we will not be able to distribute that. But also, if our trucks doesn't come back, as I was telling you earlier, we have 124 truck block in the north. Those same trucks are the ones that we're using then to deliver the following day. So if those trucks don't come back smoothly, we will have a problem. And again, drivers, we need drivers, particularly if we use the military road that are going around the Gaza Strip. We need drivers that are cleared by the Israeli, because we had the precedent cases where they have been arrested at checkpoints and so on and so forth. We want to avoid that. And those are limited in number. At the moment, I think we have 44 drivers that can do that. So there is a series of obstacles that all together, make ourselves to be seen as the one missing the pace, when in reality, and they know it, of course, there is much more complex scenario behind it. But as I said, we engage and we try to solve the issue and we move on.
And just to follow up, is it also true that Hamas and other gunmen take some of the trucks?
So when it comes to UN and NGO partners trucks, we have a chain of control to the extent possible, meaning that when the trucks are stopped in the middle of the street by desperate people that is offloading the truck, I cannot tell you who is who. We don't have that ability. But we try really our best to make sure that we deliver, and we go to delivery points that are normally managed by UN entities, notably UNRWA. Reason why we keep on saying that UNRWA is fundamental in this response, because they give us also the infrastructure and the footprint that is necessary for us to respond to the scale of this operation. I cannot tell you about the private sector because it is not under the responsibility of the UN.
Thank you. Gabriel, then we'll go to Abdelhamid and Michelle, and then we will really close it out. Thank you.
Thank you. This is Gabriel Zondo from Al Jazeera English. Thank you for your briefing and your time. I appreciate it. The Israelis said that if they could not get Iraz crossing open, they were going to open Zikum Kibbutz, a crossing there. Have they done that yet that you know of?
We've been visiting the area, and there is a lot of work to do to get there.
Okay, thank you. And the Israelis have apparently put out a tender for 40,000 tents with the anticipation of relocating people from Rafah, outside Rafah. Your thoughts?
I think I saw a tweet that was talking about much bigger number, but irrespectively of that, as I said earlier, we will, as the UN, serve people wherever they are, wherever they decide to go, and whatever they feel more safe. I have no idea what is the plan with the procurement of tents by the Israeli. We have not been, we didn't have, they didn't share their plan with us on this specific issue.
Thank you.
Thank you. Abdelhamid and Michelle, if we could keep it to one question because we're running out of time here.
Thank you. I have a few questions. I'll be brief, put them together. My first question about the attempted returnees who tried to go back to the north and they were shot at. So can you explain that, why they are prevented from going to the north? And my connected question about UNRWA, you just answered it, but what did Sigrid Gag do? Did she make a difference? I mean, do you feel, as working in the humanitarian field, that her appointment was a plus? What is she doing from day to day? And I have other questions, but I was told that I don't have time now. Okay.
The movement of people to the north, Abdelhamid, is a bit of a. We are trying to understand better because there is this people that we have spoken to. They told us they were told to go there, and that the Israeli would have opened and given access back to the north. Of course, people is thrilled about the idea to go back to their house, although their house is most probably destroyed. But the living conditions in the south are so miserable and complicated and difficult that people prefer to go back to rubble and have the sense that they are closer to their place, their home, their house. So, there is this big push, I think, for people to get there. And then, of course, it has been not only the people that has been contacted, but also then is a people talking to other people, calling each other, and then it turned out that there was thousands of people. And when we asked the IDF, they said that they were not reaching out to anyone on this. So we have I take at face value what they've said. My reading of it is that they might wanted to test the ability of people to move and the interest of people to move in preparation of what could come next. And then when they see that was going out of control in terms of the numbers, that they decided to put the stop to that. But I'm speculating a little bit. I'm just trying to read the information that the fact that we have seen in the ground. Sigrid Kaag appointment, I think that is super important to exert all the possible leverage on the parties and all the member states that have a contribution to give to the response in Gaza. I do not expect anyone to have a magic wand, and I feel that every effort possible that is creating political will behind our intention to address the needs of people is welcome. And also, I suppose that there will be a longer-term commitment for USG CAG in the reconstruction, as it goes by her title. So I'm sure that she will have opportunities to show how important her role could be.
Thank you. Michelle, one quick last short question. Thank you.
Okay, sure, Steph, I'll do the right thing. Given the progress that you've told us about towards getting more aid in and throughout Gaza, and I don't know if you haven't really spoken as to whether there's sort of been better coordination with the Israeli military within Gaza, but has any of this gone any way to preventing famine in Gaza?
Thank you, Michelle, for the question. I think you remind me that I didn't answer to a colleague that was asking about the notification and the relation with the Israeli army. So the engagement is literally, we're working 20 hours a day. I have a team literally sitting next to me here that are literally from 5 o'clock in the morning to 3 o'clock in the morning in shift, covering the discussion with the IDF. So it is important. It is important. It is not where it should be. It didn't, it's not as successful and effective as it should be. but it's the best we can have now, and that's what we're trying to do, working with them to improve day by day. In terms of the impact on the famine, as I said earlier, the problem is not just about food. The problem is that malnutrition, famine is a much more complex, and because of the quasi-total destruction of all civil infrastructure, health, water-related, sanitation-related. I was driving a couple of weeks ago to the north of Gaza, and you have to do a slalom, not only between debris of cars and buildings smashed down and everything, but also piles of garbages. And in few weeks, it will be very hot. I cannot even imagine what it means in terms of disease and sanitation. So it's much bigger than simply bringing in flour and bake few loaf of bread or pita. It is really much complex. So I think that there is an initial sign of good intention. They're not where they should be. We keep on pushing, but it's not enough, because we have really to change completely the ability that we have to deal with issues that goes beyond food. And water, sanitation, and health are fundamental to curb famine.
Thank you very much. Andrea, thank you so much for spending an hour with us. And we hope to have you back soon. And please send our best to all of your colleagues.
Thank you for having me, Steph.
Great.